So Gauteng Premier David Makhura says no stone will be left unturned in finding the killers of acting CFO in the Health Department, Babita Deokaran. The Gauteng Health Department official will be laid to rest today. Now, the protection of whistleblowers has been a thorny issue for many, many years. This morning, we asked to what extent does government protect whistleblowers? Let's bring in Mark Heywood. He is Maverick Citizen Editor and has been following developments around this story quite closely. He joins us now via our video link in Johannesburg. Mark, good morning to you. It's great to have you with us on the show on this incredibly disturbing story, the murder of Babita Deokaran. So the police are refusing at this time to call it a hit. But what can we say for sure insofar as the details around this case is concerned? Surely all the evidence does point to the fact that there is an organized criminal network operating in our government, as our government.
Good morning, Michelle. The police may be refusing to call it a hit for whatever reasons, but I think, as you say, everything points towards it being a carefully and professionally executed murder of somebody who for many years, it seems, has been reporting corruption and fraud within the Gauteng Health Department and who had to be taken out. As I understand it, from reading the Daily Maverick this morning, one of our reporters, the police actually have quite a lot of information, and it seems as if an arrest, I hope, fingers crossed, may be imminent. But I think what is important is that we catch not just the killer, but as you've said, the syndicate that operates behind it, because there is no doubt that within the Gauteng Health Department and within the government as a whole, I have to say, there is a high degree of criminality, both criminality in terms of the theft of monies, but criminality in the ways in which theft is then subsequently covered up. And, just preparing for this interview, I was thinking about, for example, the fact that the Lisbon building, the former headquarters of the Provincial Health Department, was burned down in a fire that started in the legal office. There's never been an investigation into that. There's never been an explanation into that. We're still waiting for a proper investigation into what happened at Charlotte Maxeke Hospital. There's a string of things, and it seems to me that because there is so much money available for stealing, there is an organized system to protect the people who are involved in stealing, and it goes as far as murder.
Yeah, protecting at all costs. The question now is, if the aim, among other things, was to send a chilling message to current whistleblowers, future whistleblowers, what does that mean for our fight against corruption, given that they've been so central to it up to this point?
Well, I hope it makes people more determined, but I also hope that it makes all parts of government ready to take concrete measures to encourage and to protect whistleblowers. There's a lot of lip service paid to whistleblowers, including by President Ramaphosa, who constantly commends whistleblowers. But when whistleblowers ask for measures that will protect them from victimization at work, protect them from murder like Babita Deokaran, and other means, the government is silent. And I think that is one of the problems, Michelle, is that after the tragedy, we get a lot of crocodile tears. I find that the Gauteng Health Department and the government is weeping crocodile tears at the moment. Premier Makhura sits at the top of a government that was publishing expenditure disclosure reports on COVID-19 expenditure and stopped publishing them in March of this year because they were revealing too much to ordinary people about the misuse of public monies. President Makhura's office has declared the minutes of the Provincial Command Council around COVID-19 as being classified and therefore inaccessible to anybody. Now, Babita Deokaran, in some WhatsApp exchanges, questioned the role of the Provincial Command Council because that is where all of the contracts were centralized for a period of time. So it's not satisfactory to lament a terrible death on the one hand, but on the other hand, continue to operate a system with the maximum opaqueness so that you can hide on behalf of your comrades and your colleagues some of the misdemeanors which are taking place in these departments.
Let's talk about those crocodile tears that you talk about, Mark. The Gauteng Premier David Makhura, in hearing of the murder of Babita Deokaran, saying she took to heart the call to bring perpetrators of corruption and looting of public resources to book. The result of her good deeds led to successful dismissals within the department and saw the institution of civil claims to recover public funds. That quote goes on. It's an article on page 7 of the Business Day by Freedom Under Law's Nicole Fritz. And she talks about this pretense that Deokaran was a much valued part of the Gauteng Health Department, when in fact, for some time, senior officials in that department, according to those WhatsApp messages that you just mentioned, had been harassing her for some time.
Absolutely. I mean, I know from talking to whistleblowers in the department that they are the opposite of valued. They are fearful. They are harassed. When they try to raise things, they are frequently shut down. Some people that I'm speaking to in the city of Johannesburg at the moment, where there's also massive corruption, have been suspended. People who've been implicated in corruption, who should be suspended, are back working in their offices. So it's a complete misrepresentation to suggest that accountability and honesty and the duty, the ethical duty, is what it is on a public servant to report wrongdoing, to report theft, is something that is valued and is encouraged. It only seems to be valued when you get a terrible murder of a 53-year-old mother and honest and upright public servant, and you have to respond to the public outrage. You know, most of the information that is coming out about corruption and theft in government departments isn't because that there's a system to facilitate that information coming out. It's because of the work of journalists who link up with brave whistleblowers who take personal risks to themselves to try to get this information into the public domain. So really, you know, there are concrete proposals that have been put on the table by an organization that brings together various whistleblowers from around state capture. I would like Premier Makhura, I would like President Ramaphosa to speak specifically to those concrete proposals and say, yes, we will make legislative changes, yes, we will introduce protections, and yes, we will do this immediately. And also, we call on all people who are aware of what is going on in government departments, and we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg of corruption, to come forward with that information, and we will set up a system to urgently process that information, make sure that these thieves are brought to book and are put in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. Enough with the media statements. Let's take concrete action. Mark, I want to ask you one question around the issue of the protection of whistleblowers, the protection of their identities. Quite a strange statement coming from the SIU in the aftermath of Babita Deokaran's murder, saying that, and I'm rewording it somewhat, it didn't know that she was in danger or needed protection. But at the same time, it's also said, the SIU, that Deokaran had been a witness for some time. She had been trying to secure a turnaround of a department, this is the health department in Gauteng, that has been lurching from one inhumane scandal to another.
Well, what you must know is that anybody who's honest and in a senior or even in a junior position in something like the Gauteng Health Department is being watched and is in danger. Because I don't have the evidence to say this, but everything points to it, that there's basically mafias that are operating. You know, I think we tend to think that corruption is this woolly thing. Yes, it involves lots of money, but you know, when it gets exposed, the people will throw their arms up and say, we surrender and give up. It's not that. It is something involving hundreds of millions of rands by cynical people who are prepared to go to, as we've seen, great lengths to protect the way that they are making profits, including to go to murder. So you're dealing here with not just individuals operating on their own. You're dealing with systems, with chains, with criminality within our public service, organized in a mafia-type fashion. And that, I think, is what we have to begin to understand. And let me just say this, Michelle, as well. We're all outraged by Babita Deokaran's murder. But it's not the first murder of a public servant who is trying to be honest and tell the truth. There have been murders before, and sadly, unless we do what I'm suggesting and others are suggesting, there will be murders in future. And we, as the citizens, have to stand together and say to government and say to the SIU and say to the Hawks and the NPA, do more to protect these people.
Absolutely. Mark Heywood, thanks so much for your time this morning on this incredibly devastating story. This article by Nicole Fritz from Freedom Under Law certainly does also paint the picture of what whistleblowers do have to go through, sometimes paying incredibly high prices for trying to expose government corruption. Nicole Fritz writes in the Business Day, as with many courageous public servants who have sought to do their jobs, the reward Babita Deokaran saw was only struggle, having to fight for job security and to fight off spurious misconduct allegations, harassment and intimidation, ultimately losing her life. Mark Heywood, thanks very much for weighing in on this incredibly important story in our democracy.